What's up, everyone? I'm Paul, and today on the Low to High podcast, I have a great interview with former two-time national champion at Duke University, Case Matheis. Case and I talked about his high school career, where he's considered to be one of the most decorated high school lacrosse players of all time, playing under the legendary coach of Jeff Brameyer at Darian High School. We also got to talk about his playing days at Duke and what it was like for his team to be back-to-back national champions. Case and I also spoke about what life is like after leaving the lacrosse world and how the lessons he learned during his playing days have translated to the real world. Hope you guys enjoy the show. Go follow Case on Instagram at Case Matheis, and let's get right into it. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Nah, it's just Case Matheis flying into the crease and scoring a goal. Case Matheis, former Duke University attackman and two-time national champion. Case, what's going on, man?
Paul, good to see you, dude. Thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Of course. Where are you right now?
I'm in my apartment in Manhattan, New York.
How have you been dealing with COVID so far? Quarantine. How have you been?
Pretty good. I spent a lot of time with my family, kind of from March until June. Then all of July, I rented a house with some friends out in Montauk and lived out there, which is awesome. Ironically, one of the best months of my life, despite everything going on, which is cool. And then I've been back in the city since, pretty much from August till now.
You've been doing a lot of Zooms for work and all that?
Yeah, it's become like a daily event, and as I'm sure anyone that you would talk to about the subject would say, it's just like I really value like face-to-face interactions, and the Zoom stuff is getting old, but I can do at least one more today.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Zooms just kill you, even just like the mental strain, then like your eye strain as well. It's very, very tiring. And then, unless especially in January that you can't really go outside and go take a walk, you kind of have to stay inside, put on the TV or like work out from home. So it feels, I could probably you more than me that you're in a apartment in New York City. So I'm assuming you feel a little cooped up right now.
Yeah, a little bit. Luckily I have some friends around. So like even for example, today you can go walk around on like the West Side Highway, which I did today with some buddies, walk around. Like I live in the Soho area. So there's some fun, like kind of sightseeing just to go walk around and people watch, if you will, or just go walk around the West Village or whatnot. So you can still find ways to keep yourself busy.
You ever go on the High Line?
Yeah, I've done that before. I would say only a handful of times. I more prefer just the West Side Highway. It's more accessible typically and a little more open. And I have one of my former teammates. His name's Chad Cohen. He's number 4 in my class. We have a rollerblade gang, so we go rip up the West Side Highway on Sundays typically.
For sure. So as quarantine as a whole, what do you think was like the biggest thing you took out of it, or something that you mastered?
I learned how to play guitar, which was nice. So that was a cool skill I picked up. I would say it's probably a little bit more like the heavier side of things, but I just have refused to like live in fear, I guess. I try to be respectful and follow the guidelines and everything, but I think you see some people walk around just terrified day to day because of what's going on in our society. And something I've learned is I refuse to like let that even enter my mind, which is cool. I just try to be as positive and as optimistic as possible. And I think now more than ever, there's a premium for that in our society. So yeah, it's a little bit more, a little bit on the heavier side, but I try to just be as positive and optimistic and worry-free as possible when it comes to anything related to that topic, for sure. And I value, one other thing is you realize how important your friends are to you, which when you play college lacrosse or you're on any sort of sports team, you always have your friends just kind of instantly there, and you have those communications instantly there. But once I was like shacked up back with my parents in Connecticut for about 3 or 4 months, and your friends aren't like you're around your family obviously, but your true like friend, like your non-family friends, if you will, like your social life's gone, and having that around you is such an integral part of like my happiness and what I get out of life now.
Mm-hmm. Just like you were saying, just like even though you're missing those face-to-face interactions, that like you could almost still keep those relationships strong despite all this going on.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I would say there's been some weird silver linings of this whole situation, and one of the things has been there's a handful of friends I've just become even closer with throughout the time, which is cool. And like we like the group that we did the Montauk house with primarily, like we were always like close, and you live in the city and like you like see each other out at like bars or whatever in a normal circumstance. And now like we're living together in a house for 1 month and like, you just become so much closer than just like drinking buddies on the weekends, which is cool.
Yeah, definitely. So, in the house in Montauk, you don't have your parents helping you cook and stuff. It's just you guys. Were you a big cook, or did you help out or like doing it and do any of that stuff?
We had a few guys that were very adamant about the going and buying food at the grocery store and cooking it at home. I'm the kind of guy where I just like to go do takeout, frankly. So I don't think I cooked once in Montauk.
That's all right. It's all right. Don't worry.
Yeah.
No shame. No shame in that. No shame in that.
Nah, we had some good options around us.
I found, a couple of guys that I spoke with in the lacrosse world or just in general, like people like my friends, is that they learned to cook and like kind of master cooking during quarantine. Whether it was like I found it in myself that I like started to be really good at like making like breakfast food. Like I learned how to make hash browns. I learned how to make good scrambled eggs with. Yeah, so that was like probably one of my silver linings, just learning how to cook. I spoke about this in like an episode before, but I'll just say it again because I think cooking, in my opinion, is just such an important habit to have. My parents have loved cooking. My mom loves cooking. My dad he's obsessed with cooking. And, I know I used to know how to make the basics, but now, if I was forced upon, like if I had to cook for myself, I could, and I think I can make some pretty good meals. Yeah, I love it. I think it's it's a good hobby because I never felt as if a person I really had a hobby. And I think picking up cooking a little bit more was it like could be another thing I could add to being like something that I enjoy.
Yeah, we did 1 week during quarantine when I was living at home where each member of the family had to cook and prepare a meal one night. So when I was up at bat for that, I learned how to do chicken parm with broccolini and angel hair pasta, which is awesome.
How'd it come out?
It came out really well, actually. It was fun because like I had to get the ingredients and prepare it, but like I still needed extra hands in the kitchen. So I was kind of like leading the show, but like we had like my mom was helping out my sisters, so it became like a family thing as well. Just a new activity to do, and we had a really good time with it that night.
Oh yeah, definitely. You need more than like one hand in the kitchen. Like I know my parents always
things going on at once. Yeah.
So Case, let's talk a little bit more about lacrosse. So let me start off with a couple of questions I want to ask you. Where are you originally from?
From Darian, Connecticut.
When did you start getting into lacrosse?
I think I was in first grade, and we had a program called Blue Wave Buddies where members of the high school lacrosse team in Darian came and helped coach and teach us lacrosse.
What position did you start out at?
I was always attack.
Mm-hmm. And was it just something you took up by yourself, or were you like influenced by some of your friends that were also playing?
Yeah, I would say when I first started learning the game, like I said earlier in first grade, I did not enjoy lacrosse at all, actually. And it was more of something that my parents guided me to do because it was like, it was and is the biggest sport, I would say, in our town. Or so that's how it felt when I was there. And they pushed me along, and it really wasn't until fifth grade where we started playing travel lacrosse. And I had a coach, his name's Dom Finn. He was a Syracuse lacrosse legend, was just inducted into the National Lacrosse Hall of Fame. And the way he coached or whatever it was about him really started to open my eyes to the sport of lacrosse. And I think like that summer I went to one of the Powell camps, and going and being around those guys was also what took it to the next level. So I would say the former Syracuse players are very responsible for me falling in love with the sport and trying to take that to the next level.
Growing up, were you a big Syracuse fan because of that?
Yeah, I would say my favorite lacrosse player growing up was definitely Mikey Powell. I used to watch all those tapes that are out there on the internet from like the old Final Fours, and I mean from the late '90s through 2008. Yeah. Syracuse was in pretty much every Final Four, which is pretty cool. Up until 2009, I think it was. So they were really fun to watch, and I've always had respect for the way that they play the game.
Yeah, they completely changed how lacrosse was viewed and how lacrosse was played on both on a national level and in the world of lacrosse. Powell's really did shape what kind of modern lacrosse is today.
100%. Yeah.
And besides playing lacrosse, did you play any other sports growing up?
Yeah, I played hockey up until my freshman year of high school, and I played a lot of tennis actually early on as well, but it was primarily lacrosse and hockey.
Besides like looking up players from Syracuse, what other college or professional athletes did you love seeing or love watching as a kid?
I would say that there was a guy in my town named Kyle Hollingsworth, who he graduated Darian High School in 2005 and went on to have a great career at Brown. And he's actually, so in high school I wore number 4, and the reason I wore the number was because of him. And he was pretty instrumental in developing my skill sets in like the middle school years. I used to work with him, do private lessons, whatnot. So I'd say definitely Kyle. Yeah, it was really like he sticks out more than any other, and then obviously the Powells. Frankly, those were the main guys I was following.
Yeah, and would you say you kind of emulated how you played your game after the Powells and Kyle?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, Kyle was next attackman at Darian and at Brown, and obviously everyone knows who Mikey is. And I used to watch those tapes all the time, and that's when I tried to structure my game around 100%.
When you were young, how would you structure your game? Would you go play wall ball for hours? Would you just play in your backyard? What was like your go-to practice routine?
Yeah, it was definitely wall ball. I had like that one of those like Ryan rebounders in the backyard. My parents were able to set up lights in the trees, so it would be like come home after school, just pound against the wall, pretty much both hands. Whatever I did righty, I would always do 2x lefty. That was a rule that I had for myself with all that stuff. Yeah, so wall ball was definitely the foundation of all that stuff, and then it was just like having fun, messing around, shooting in the backyard.
For sure. What do you think was like your longest stint of just playing wall ball for like a number of consecutive hours?
I don't know, man. Could have been. I was out there for a while. Like it was one of those classic stories where like the neighbors getting all pissed off because I was out there late at night. I don't know. I have no idea what the longest would have been, but definitely up there for a few hours.
I've heard rumors of someone going like, I forget who it was, but it was like 10 hours straight. It was just like a Saturday afternoon and they just went after practice and they just didn't come home, which is like crazy because I, over quarantine, what my biggest thing was just playing wall ball 2 hours every single day. And like on the 5th day, I actually ended up like hurting my arm because I was playing for too long. But you have to do it in something that you have to do in moderation because it could be tough on your shoulders. But nonetheless, I think wall ball is a staple in almost every great lacrosse player's like routine. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. It literally is what when I used to go to those Powell camps, they would always preach basically if you have good stick skills, then a coach is going to find a place for you on the field, no matter what your level of athleticism is. And I think that's very true. Something that's great about the sport of lacrosse is there really is a position for everyone, regardless of size, speed, strength, etc. So yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
For sure. And going into high school, you're going into a legendary program at Darian. What did it mean to you that you got to play for a team with such an historic background?
It was great. It's one of these things where when you're going through, first of all, you grow up in our town, like I alluded to earlier, where lacrosse is the biggest sport, and you've been playing for the town for however many years, and you pretty much idolize the high school lacrosse players. Like those guys are gods to you. And so then once you're finally in it, it's pretty cool. And we had a great run when I was there, a great 4 years, some great memories that obviously will last a lifetime. But now you do look back on it, and the coach Braemar is still there now. He has built the program from scratch. He's the figurehead, if you will, of Darian lacrosse. And it's just cool because now I'm on the other side of it, and all of these people who have gone through and played at Darian, and you could say the same thing about Duke also as well. There's a common bond you share amongst everyone who's done it, and you see how this legacy of the program itself gets built and carried on. And I feel pretty lucky to have been a part of that.
Seeing all the players that have gone to play Division 1, 2, or 3 at Darian, does it just kind of show how well of a coach Coach Braemar is at just developing players from when they're freshmen to their senior year?
Yeah, definitely. Coach B gets credit for that, and I think you also have to give credit to the youth program itself and the amount of parents, frankly, fathers in the area that dedicate their time to coaching kids at the youth level. So by the time they do get into Coach B's hands, they've already been well developed. They've done the summer camps, etc., the summer teams, which also to Coach B's credit, I remember when I was in 6th grade, like the club circuit was nothing anywhere really. And Coach B was one of the first guys to start the Connecticut Chargers. And I know for me personally, and for a lot of the guys my age and the guys below me that became part of the program, having the experience playing for the Chargers allowed us to build our skill sets even more. So I would say it was Coach B's, it was a youth program, Coach B at the high school once the kids get to high school, but also Coach B's time he spent building out the summer program of the Chargers really was impactful on a lot of people.
Did you ever feel that, since you were playing, I know everyone now does play summer lacrosse, but did you ever think, did you ever get tired of playing lacrosse year round?
No, I was always frustrated because I felt like I was always playing my best lacrosse at like the end of July, right at the end of the club circuits.
Yeah.
And then you had to go put the stick away for pretty much August and however many months of fall you weren't going to play. So in summer lacrosse will always be some of my favorite lacrosse memories, playing on those teams with your friends, slogging out to Jersey or Baltimore, and then like staying at the hotel after, all that stuff. Those memories are cool.
Practically having Gatorade as injected into you 24/7 in the 100.
There's this tournament. It was like do you ever play in the Tri-State tournament out in Jersey?
No, I haven't.
I don't know if they still have it, but it was literally like you play like 6 games in one day, and it's like 95 degrees out.
Because you think about because you think about going from, a 16, 17 game high school season in the spring, playing maybe once or twice a week, then playing 6 games or 6 to 9 games in 2 days is just a crazy turnaround. And that's when and in the summer you have to play your best lacrosse there. So yeah, that's something that's a little bit unspoken, is just like the mentality and just the physical strain of summer lacrosse. Even though it's probably some of the best times you ever have, it's tough because it's, especially when you're playing on the turf in those turf games that you're not on the grass field. It's 10 degrees hotter than it actually is in the sun. At 3 p.m. and it's like 120 degrees and you got to run around. It gets tough at times.
Yeah, and something that I feel like you might have been alluding to is, or I heard you start to talk about it, but this concept of playing in summer tournaments towards the back half of your high school career is vastly different than when you're playing in middle school or in the first half of your high school career, because then you're worrying about getting recruited and playing in front of people. And the fun of what summer lacrosse is, in my eyes, kind of gets zapped out a little bit because of that fact. I mean, the whole recruiting process itself is fun, and that's awesome to go do and be a part of that. It's a different kind of fun, obviously, though. Just going out and slinging the ball around with your boys feels much different when you're in middle school in those summer weekends. And I know that one of my former teammates, Deemer Class, he's running his first class lacrosse program, and I haven't been following it too closely, but I know that one thing he emphasizes when he runs his showcases or his events is that no coach is there to watch, so you're just there to have fun and play lacrosse with really talented players, and to offer that kind of unstructured environment, I think is unique. And I would like to see, I don't follow a lot of the lacrosse stuff as well as I should be, but I would like to see that more in the game. And I don't know if it exists more than it does now, but I think that's something that doesn't have to get talked about enough, for sure.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. Especially not just lacrosse, it should be like all sports, that there's just events that it's just you to play and there's no one to impress.
Yeah.
I mean, you see in these you ever see those football camps in the summer or in the fall that there's like maybe 150 coaches there and it's just you again, like you're not even with anyone, it's that stuff like that can almost like suck the fun out of sports. And it's unfortunate, but it depends.
But it's a different kind of fun though, like playing in front of all those coaches is actually a really cool experience in and of itself, and important when you're getting recruited. It's just different.
Unless you have like a very
different.
It depends on how you play as well. Because if you have like a crappy day playing, then like you're gonna be a little bit down on yourself. But if you play really well, you're gonna be really excited. So like hopefully the sport kind of does transition to that. And I think it will. But it is what it is right now, and I think it's still sport lacrosse is still growing in that sense. So it's not something to worry about too much, but it'd be something nicer to see. I think we could both agree on that.
Yeah, totally.
So, Case, what was your recruiting process like? We were just talking about that, Summer Bowl. What was your recruiting process like, and why'd you end up choosing Duke?
Yeah, so I think it was mostly occurring over the summer of my sophomore going into junior year. I went to Blue Chip in Maverick Showtime and was playing for the Chargers. And it like I think the class before me, the class of 2011 in high school, is when you started to see some of the early recruiting happening. And then my class was probably the last one before it all got pretty crazy. So I ended up committing to Duke the first week of September, my junior year. I had done in-person visits to UVA Duke on the same weekend. And it really came down to those two and Princeton and Syracuse. Those are really the top four. And yeah, I would say that Duke was a pretty easy choice because I thought it gave me the best chance of winning a national championship and also getting a world-class education. I just felt so comfortable meeting the guys on the team and going down and meeting the coaching staff in person. I just felt so comfortable there, and I felt like it was more of like a gut feel than anything else. There was something about that experience that resonated with me very strongly, and it has sent this kind of template for decision making that I've had throughout the rest of my life now, where once you make the decision and you know it's right, no matter what comes up after that decision's made, you just know in your gut that you've made the right choice, and there's no doubt whatsoever in your mind, which is a really cool feeling to have at that point in time.
Yeah, for sure. And what was it that like Coach Danowski kind of preached to you, maybe personally, that kind of just stood out the most?
You know, I wouldn't say there was anything preachy or shoved in my face at all, and it's almost the inverse of that. They were just so relaxed, and it was kind of the way they communicated was, hey, if you want to come, we'd love to have you. If you don't want to come, then great, that's fine too. Like that was like the overall tone that was communicated, maybe non-verbally. And I thought that was such a position of confidence to come from when you're selling, I guess, or recruiting a player. And yeah, that was that more than anything else from the coaching staff, just very calm and secure, and what I guess is the way to put it. Yeah.
And being, you were ranked the number one recruit in your class, did that ever put any sense of pressure for you in high school while you were playing?
I would say no, because it was something that was a goal I'd set for myself in like middle school. So once you achieve the goal, you have that. I don't know. Yeah, I never thought really twice about that. If anything, having an X on your back was kind of exciting in a way, knowing that every time you step on the field, like someone either wants to crush you or is waiting to watch something cool happen. Like that feeling of anticipation when you step on the field, I thought was very cool.
Just like everyone's looking at you in the stadium. Is that something that like you like that kind of rush of everyone knowing who you are? Not like it sounds narcissist what I'm trying to say, but like, just everyone knowing who you are. Is that something that like you kind of loved?
I mean, it was fun. It's fun to be in the spotlight, 100%. And again, kind of circling back to this concept of like learning things when you're in high school or college or whatever. I think it was a really good learning experience as well to be subjected to that, if you will. But it was fun. It was a fun time. Yeah.
So I got to ask you about your highlight tape. So it's like the most viewed lacrosse highlight tape on on YouTube right now. What was did you make that yourself?
No, so it was Lacrosse Recruits was the company that I was working with at the time to put that all together. So they were responsible for like the editing and everything like that.
If you could add any song from when it was made in 2012 to now in 2021, what song would you use to just like go over the highlight tape instead of the music you used back then?
Oh, like a new song from today?
Yeah.
I would choose. I like that song "In My Mind" by Denoro. Have you heard that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would fit.
Okay. And would you also, I mean, it's like, how long is, I think it's like 10, 11 minutes. Would you shorten it, or would you try to make it a little bit longer?
Make it longer?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think 10 minutes was the perfect time. I don't think it needs to be any longer than that. And I don't know. I don't think I was short either. I think it was perfect the way it was.
You liked it? Okay. I mean, there's multiple copies on it because I was looking at it a couple of days ago, right after you reached back out to me. There's like multiple copies of it online. There's also like different edits of it. There's one like at the end, it's your state championship game, and it has like all the list of all your accolades, and it's like the voiceover, which I thought's the coolest part is the voiceover of the comment, like the play-by-play commentator. If you remember, I think what would you say that's like the coolest part of it? What do you think was the coolest part?
Yeah, my senior year when we won the state championship, it was pretty cool experience, pretty cool memory. And that's always just such a cool day for the program itself. When you play in that game at the stadium, it's Brian McMahon Stadium in Norwalk, Connecticut. So it was like a hot summer day, and the 3 times I played in those games, we won, and it's just a really fun moment amongst everyone else. And then summer like is right around the corner after that too.
And you get
Cool.
to you get to look forward for that. What was Darian's walkout song usually, or pregame song that you guys either play in the locker room or on the field?
So we didn't have music on our field, which was terrible.
Oof.
There was no pregame warm up when I played. Now there is. It was because of like neighbors or something. But I remember my junior, like the one song that sticks out distinctly was my junior year. We listened to Euro Dancer. That song, that was a big one in the locker room.
That's good.
Yeah.
And what about? Would you guys have a locker? Do you have a speaker in the locker room for post game?
Some like speaker system or something. Yeah.
What was the big? If you guys had a huge win, what was the big post game song?
Yeah, post game song. I remember my senior year was Heart Vacancy DJ from Mars remix.
Everyone has like I feel like every lacrosse team has someone who's like a DJ on the team who just loves playing with SoundCloud and just makes these like god awful mixes that everyone thinks are so good, and they just have these crazy beat drops. But those are things that are just like hilarious to have, like in the memories of just like those crazy beat drops and like the mosh pits after a huge win. It's just something it's like something you probably will never forget, even though like in the moment it was like the song was terrible, or like what were you guys even doing? But it's just awesome to look back on.
100%. I distinctly remember my freshman year, before I don't remember if we had played like songs in the locker room before in the games, but we had not done this before, and we played Heat of the Moment by Asia in the locker room before the game. And I just, for some reason, that moment sticks out to me more than anything else.
Yeah. And also end of your high school career after you won the state championship, I think you got to play in the first Under Armour All-American game. So how was that experience like?
That was cool. That was a really, really cool experience. They definitely ran that event to make you feel like not like a professional athlete, but I felt like the treatment we got was similar to the treatment that like a college football recruit gets when they do whatever it is they do for their All-American games. It was really well run event, and obviously the best players in the country at that point in time for our age group. It was cool.
Was it cool playing on Homewood? Was it at Homewood your year?
We played at Towson's Field.
Yeah, that's always packed. Like when they have, because Towson hosts the MIAA for like their lacrosse finals, and from like the photos you see on YouTube and like videos you see on YouTube, it's just packed. Was it like packed for you when you played in it?
I wouldn't say it was packed. I mean, obviously people in the stands, but I would not have called it packed.
Nowadays it's huge. It's like huge for people because like everyone goes now because they have the underclass games as well, and like all the people that were playing that go to that, and then all the people from Maryland also go watch. So hopefully, I don't know what's going to happen with it like next year. I know they didn't have it next year, but I don't think Under Armour makes lacrosse equipment anymore. So I think another. Yeah, they're done. Yeah, they cut. It happened in August or July, I want to say, but everyone, it's tough, honestly. Everyone, I know all the teams that had Maryland, Yale. I know all like the Maryland teams had, like all the Maryland schools had Under Armour as a sponsor. I know a couple ACC teams did. So I think Maverick picked them. I think they still make like jerseys, but they don't make actual like gloves, sticks, and stuff. They
Yeah.
cut all that. That's unfortunate because I actually
Yeah.
kind of liked some of the stuff they made, but I think someone else is going to pick it up. But that's always a huge event in the sport of lacrosse that doesn't get broadcasted as big as it should be. So looking forward to seeing that kind of grow and trend in the upward direction. But besides that, I want to talk a little bit about your time at Duke. So what was it like stepping into your first fall ball practice at Duke?
It was cool, man. So we basically show up to campus, and the first month is just weightlifting and running. So you're not actually playing lacrosse or anything like that. So you're getting to know the guys through that process, and then you actually strap up the equipment, and it's a way different experience. And it's cool. I mean, similar to what I was saying earlier about playing for Darian, when you playing for Duke, it's something you've been anticipating for years at that point in time. And once you're finally there, you kind of just hop right into it and see what you can achieve. And yeah, it was very cool. That year was awesome with those guys on that team. It was a lot of fun.
Were you a little surprised? Because I know when people talk about the transition from high school to college, did you ever think like the ball was just moving 10 times faster than what you were used to playing at?
Yeah, I would 100%. I think the biggest hurdle in that regard to overcome when you first show up is just knowing all the movements on the field, basically, like what the proper rotations are from the attack position when midfielders are dodging or when attackmen are dodging, where you need to be position-wise on the field, because like the ball is moving faster, but then also the people are moving faster to be in those various positions. So I think for me, that was the biggest adjustment, is just knowing what I needed to be doing at any given point in time on the field.
Yeah. And what was your favorite drill your first year coming in, like favorite lacrosse drill that you like doing?
Yeah, we do a lot of ground ball. We did a lot of ground ball drills at Duke, and there's one called scrapping, where you kind of line up like 2 or 3 guys on the mouth of the goal, and the ball just gets rolled out, and you fight for the ground ball and try to score. So those ones are really fun.
Did you see what Duke was doing this past fall ball with the Duke Outdoor Lacrosse League?
Yeah, I saw that from afar. I like the press releases and everything like that to keep it interesting.
Yeah, that was awesome. I thought that just goes to show how creative and how good of a coach Coach Nanowski is, just coming up, especially in such a tough position like that the sport was in, and just sports in general, to come up with a thing that just helps, boost the team's morale and get them being competitive again after, going from 8 months of not playing lacrosse is just something super special, in my opinion.
Yeah, and what was really cool to see is they were pretty much taking advantage of the fact that they have such a big roster now because of all these transfers that came in. So they could play these very intense, I would imagine, very intense games every weekend. So I would think that offers some sort of competitive advantage to other programs for just getting reps in the fall. And a lot of these guys had seasons taken away from them last year. So to get out there and compete again against high-level players was probably very meaningful for those guys, I would imagine.
100%. Yeah, I fully agree. And going back to playing at Duke, playing your first year at Duke, what were some things that you were just trying to work on as a player to help improve on that you think you needed some work on?
I spent a lot of time working on my shot that year specifically. I thought that needed a lot of work. And again, it was the shot. It was kind of knowing where you're supposed to be on the field. And I think a lot of what you have to overcome early in your career in the college level is the mental aspect of it, and just making sure that, like, when you show up on day one, you have no role on the team really, and you have to work through and earn respect and trust your teammates, coaching staff, etc. And there's mental obstacles you have to overcome along the way to excel in that realm. So I'd say a lot of mental work as well.
And bouncing off of that, who do you think out of all the upperclassmen helped you transition? Helped you with that transition, just helping you learn the plays, learning how the practices is run. Who was a guy that you looked up to?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that year, specifically, a lot of guys I looked up to. I would say, as far as like really getting me comfortable on the field, it would probably be Josh Stein and Jordan Wolf, those 2 guys who I ended up playing with on attack that year. So playing with them every day and whatnot, they were just always there to answer any questions or provide leadership, for sure.
And out of Josh or Jordan, who do you think you tried to not almost emulate your game, but just learn from the most? Because they were both terrific players. Who'd you try and just try and understand the most as a lacrosse player?
Yeah, I mean, they both had different skill sets, and I would say if you were to try to compare the two, that's hard. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
But I would say to pick one thing from each of them, I would say something that really stood out to me about Jordan was that he brought it in practice every single day, and the consistency to do that was, I always thought, very admirable. So that's something I learned from him, or tried to take from him, because he was so good at doing that. And then Josh Dime was like he is one of the best teammates, if not the best teammate I've ever had. So he was like a great locker room guy, really fun player to play with, very scrappy, great rider. So those would be two things I would highlight from them that I tried to learn from.
Out of like all the players that you played with on like the offensive side, like Miles, Jordan, Josh, or Deemer, out of like any of them, who do you think like had an underrated skill that no one really knew about? You know how Miles is like very strong, like everyone knows like Miles is really strong. Deemer's a great shooter. Jordan's lightning quick. Who do you think had a skill set that was kind of underrated?
Yeah, I would say the first one that comes to mind is Chad Cohan, who's also in my class. I mentioned him earlier. He was just underrated in my opinion in general. Really good dodger, really good ball carrier, and you can make the argument that on another team where Miles and Deemer were not on the midfield line, he would have been like the go-to midfield, like the number one midfielder in a lot of teams in the country that year, our senior year. He was a really good player.
I mean, I remember watching. I think it was 2013. Yeah, it was 2013 championship. You know how they aired all the championships on Memorial Day?
Yeah.
I mean, that was just a 10-hour binge of just lacrosse for me. I don't know if it was the same for you, but I feel that was just an awesome week and a half. But I remember watching those games and just seeing how fluid your offense was at Duke. What do you think contributed to that the most?
We just had, like, if you look at which were you referring to 2013 or 2014 or both? Or?
Yeah, 2013.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that offense, you had arguably the best ball carriers in the country at each respective position. Like you had Wolf on our attack line, and then Dave Lawson that year was the first team All-American midfielder. And so when you have guys that got two specific guys like that who can really break down defense, it just opens up the door for everyone else on the offense to operate at high capacity. And so you're drawing slides, you're moving the ball, you're attacking the weak side of the defense, and yeah, that's a person. First thing that comes to mind is that, and then we're just always taught at Duke to make smart decisions and have good stick skills, play with both hands, stuff like that. I don't know. Those are the things that come to mind.
Yeah, definitely. And going off of how strong Duke was in 2013, you guys ended up in championship day weekend for the second time in like 3 years. Why did you feel that Duke was just being so consistent even before you were there to 2013 and then eventually 2014?
Yeah, so I think to brush up on that stat, I think at some point there was a point in time where Duke had been to like 8 consecutive Final Fours or something insane like that.
Yeah.
And I think it just has to come down to the culture of the team and the staff, frankly. That feels like a cookie cutter answer, but it really isn't, because I truly believe that, and the thing you can point to is if you look at the Duke lacrosse team or the program since Coach D's gotten there, I don't think you could find one player that's ever transferred out of the program once being on. Like, there's been a few disciplinary situations, but you have never seen one player willingly transfer away from the team to go play somewhere else. And if you talk about like actions speaking louder than words, that speaks volumes to me. I don't know if you can say that about any other program in the country.
No, I mean, you even see in 2020, 9 out of their 10 scorers are still staying, and they bring in the number one player in the country, the number one freshman in the country, bring in a bunch of new guys, and everyone still wants to stay because they still want to be a part of that. What you're saying is just that environment of Duke. Yeah,
100%. And you have guys doing 6 years because they just want to stay there for one more year. So, like I said, actions speak louder than words, and something like that speaks volumes.
And finally, winning your national championship in 2013 as a freshman, how did that feel for you as a player? That first year in, you already checked something off your college lacrosse bucket list.
Yeah, man, that was a surreal experience. like all these things we've talked about, it's something that you set as a goal for years in advance, and then it finally happens. And I mean, at that point in time, for like I guess my life, that was really cool. And you're with these guys who you work so hard with the entire year, especially that team, because we started out 2-4 and we faced a lot of adversity early on in the season. And there really was it felt like there's a real arc, it's almost like a sports movie in a way, like the story arc of how that season unfolded. And I've learned so much and carried so many lessons away from that experience specifically, just progressing and persevering through all the adversity we faced, and then to end up as champions at the end was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, for sure. And, right after winning in 2013, what were you looking forward to most in the 2014 season?
I think it's got to be, and it's easier said now because it ended up happening. But my first thought was like, we can do this again. We brought back a lot of the same core guys from the 2013 team. And at that point in my mind, it was, I want to win as many of these things as possible. So it was just getting back in the weight room, back in the training room, and getting ready for 2014.
And, would you say the same stuff that contributed to your success in 2013 kind of just brought over to what, like to continue what had already started into 2014?
Yeah, I mean, it's a confidence thing more than anything else when you look at it from that perspective. We brought back a lot of the same guys, and we were all running on fumes from the high of 2013, walking into the doors of 2014, and then the coaching becomes much clear, like in terms of listening to coaches and like taking the messages and knowing what's at the end of the tunnel. If you follow what the coaches say, it becomes much easier in that respect, from that respect. And yeah, we great leader. That 2014 team, if you look at that class that graduated, having won 2 championships on the back end of their careers, you look at guys like Jordan, Josh, Christian Walsh, Luke Dupree, Henry Laub, Chris Hipps. Those guys were all, yeah, how could I forget Brendan Fowler? Of course, yeah. Like, dude, like you look at those guys, that's just, it's crazy. Those guys are all just absolute studs, and they set the tone. They have set the tone for the program from that point on. Yeah. There was a tone that had been set before those guys even got to Duke, but they carried the torch in a way that hasn't been matched. So.
Yeah, because of how memorable those championship games they've played in still translate to how powerful a team could be, with so many different personalities in the sense of how they play, not of who they are, but personalities of how, like, there's, like, you could say 5 out of 6 of your guys on your starting offense were ball dominant players, but you guys stuck to the system, and both years, 2013, 2014, you still come out with a national championship. And it just shows to see like how powerful like team chemistry and team, like being good teammates with each other, just translated off into the lacrosse field.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a lot. 2013 was the year of, like I said, persevering through the adversity of being 2-4 early on and really proving ourselves and paving the way. And then 2014 had a much different feel from the perspective of like, we've done it, we've proven this to ourselves, and we get to have a little, like, I felt like it was doing what we did in 2013 was very fun. The fun we had in 2014 was different in a way that's hard to describe. But yeah, and that's, I think that's evidenced by the fact too, you look at some of the scores that we posted in that year, and they're like, there was a run there where we were just like hanging 20 goals on every team that we played, and the offense was firing. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was looking at the box scores before this, and it was just like 21-6 against like number 16th ranked Army or something crazy. Yeah, I was like, wow, like these guys were just putting up points left and right. So it was really cool to see that 2014. Just watching 2014 team play as well, with all the guys that are still playing now professionally, and guys that everyone still remembers, even if you guys aren't, like, even like you, Chris Walsh, guys like that still are known around the lacrosse world. But going to like talking about Memorial Day as a whole in the lacrosse world, what is the atmosphere like playing on championship weekend?
Oh, it's the best. It's college lacrosse. Like, PLO is doing some great things right now and growing the sport professionally, but I think it might take a few more years for the college lacrosse Memorial Day weekend to be dethroned. It's really the pinnacle of the sport, and everyone's watching, everyone's there, and it's really, really fun experience.
Did you ever get like the goosebumps just realizing like from when you were a kid you remember watching these guys play? I know you said you were a big Syracuse fan watching, you got to see watch Mikey Powell and all the other Powell brothers play on Memorial Day, and you always dreamed of playing Memorial Day, and then you kind of realize like, wow, like I'm in this spot that those guys were 10 years ago. Did you ever come to that in your mind when you were there?
Yeah, definitely. I think from 2006 through up until 2013, my freshman year, I had been to every single Final Four, and so I walked out of the stadium in 2012 thinking, I hope I can be on the field next year, and then it happened. And yeah, it's hard to really describe, to put into words. Just very cool experience.
And since you're out after graduating, do you still like try to watch all the Memorial Day games if you can catch them on TV?
Yeah, I'll say more than anything, I try to catch every Duke lacrosse game, and then what was it? I was at the Duke game when they played UVA in the last Final Four.
2019.
Yeah, the last Final Four. I was out there for that. But yeah, I try to go still. Really now it's only when Duke plays. I went to the Duke EL game in was that 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Went to that game. Went to the Duke UVA game. So it's at the point now where I'll go when Duke's in. I wouldn't go if Duke wasn't in.
So I gotta ask you, and I try to ask everyone that I have on the show, but I wanna push the Duke bias because Duke's been there. Besides the Duke games, what do you think have been some of your favorite Final Four games to watch and national championship games to watch?
Well, I mean, you can't caveat that when I can't remove any of the Duke games because I think the best game ever was the 2010 Duke UVA semifinal game under the lights.
Very true, with CJ Costa. Okay, so we'll include Duke in the. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that game in and of itself, I was at that game with my dad and some high school teammates, and that was the coolest lacrosse game I've ever seen, and I think it was one of the best games that happened. I would say I remember the Notre Dame Denver game was really good in 2015.
Yeah, that was a crazy game.
And then obviously the championship game my senior year was a good one between UNC and Maryland. That sticks out as well.
What about?
Oh, the Brown Maryland game was really fun too.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you. What about the Brown Maryland game? What are your thoughts on that like weekend as a whole? What do you think like?
I mean, that was my senior year at Duke, so that was a little bit tough because at that point we had lost to Loyola in the first round and my career was over. So then like you're just hanging out at home. I was at that point I had been home for a few weeks and you're just kind of hanging, waiting for your job. Like I was going to start working in the city, so I was just chilling at home until that job started. But I loved watching the Brown guys play, frankly. And a lot of those guys are friends of mine now in the city, which is cool. Yeah, that was as bummed as I was to not be there, and it was tough to have to watch that from your TV, but it was a very high quality game in my opinion, so it was fun.
So I'm gonna ask you one more question about this. It's what about that 2004 Navy Syracuse game? Do you remember that game?
Yeah, I have that. I had that DVD in like high school that I watched all the time. That game's awesome.
So I just want to go back to you won in 2014, and going into your summer in 2015, going back to Duke as a junior year, you're a two-time national championship. What kind of expectations did you set for yourself in 2015?
Yeah, I mean, it was the same kind of feeling from 2014 going into that year where it's all right, like, can we win 4 of these? Can we win 3? Like, how many more of these can we do? And so that's the first thing. It's you want to do it again because having gone at that point in time, having gone through that experience twice, it's just such a surreal thing to do and to experience with your teammates. And it's this massive reward waiting for you at the end of a hard, long year working in the weight room, working on the practice field, the ups and downs of a season. So I think more than anything, it was wanting to come in there and win another one. But the caveat with that is this time we weren't returning a lot of the same guys that we had the year prior because that senior class graduated. So it was working with that fact as well and realizing that there was new opportunities to try to step up and be a leader in the program.
Mm-hmm. And with Jordan and Chris that graduated the year before in 2014, what kind of role did you want to set for yourself on the attack that maybe you couldn't have done as a sophomore and freshman?
Yeah, it was definitely becoming more of a ball carrier and trying to be a better presence on the field, I guess, from that perspective, and trying to be more of a leader and um, going through the ups and downs of like what that entails as well, because that's much easier said than done. And I feel like I've learned a lot from that experience as well of trying to put yourself in a leadership position in whatever capacity that is. So yeah, that's definitely from that perspective how I looked at things.
I wanted to ask you this earlier, like when we were talking about when you first got into college, but I want to ask you, what was like for you, what was like your go-to move or like the perfect setup for you if you got the chance to dodge? What would you try and do, or what was the most effective for you when it came to when you had the ball in your stick and you had the green light to dodge?
Yeah, I would say it was definitely the roll dodge. It was typically after I would always try to split and like I would always roll after a split. That's what I tried to do. So you kind of get the guy chasing you and overcommitting a little bit when you make your first initial move, and then you can roll back and go the other way. So I'd say that was probably it.
Yeah, I know you're not one of the biggest guys on the field. Do you think like that roll dodge was super effective for you because defenders are usually kind of slip on that if the guy they're playing is a little bit smaller and quicker? Do you think that's like kind of what like trying to sliding off of that, like sliding off the defender is kind of how you got a lot of your goals?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that being able to use my advantages or my strengths to my advantage is the goal in anything you do. So that
Mhm.
allowed me to use my agility to my advantage for sure. And having a lower center of gravity allows you to take like a better angle, I guess, if you will, off of that move as well.
What do you think was your favorite goal so far? So far in your college career at that point?
I had so in 2013 it was the first round of the playoffs in double overtime, and I scored that goal to win that game. So definitely that one.
Did you have a nice celly, or was it were you just
Yeah,
strictly just giving
Josh
high five?
Darian tackled me, and then it was like a dog pile, which was fun.
You ever get scared on the being the bottom of the dog pile? I just like I
Yeah,
always
I've
see in
never
the
never enjoyed that. Yeah,
okay. Because I always see it in the NFL, when there's a fumble and just you got 20 other people and you're at the bottom of it. It's gotta be scary, especially when there's 40 of your teammates coming and tackling.
yeah.
That's gotta how can you enjoy that? I don't get that.
Josh Dine was just screaming. He's like, "I got you, buddy," the whole time during that dog pile. So I won't forget
That's
that either.
that's great. I mean, what would be your if you had the chance to like if you had like a nice low to high shot, low to high, but what would be like your go-to celebration if you had one?
I don't know, man. I usually just go celebrate with my teammates, and whoever passed me the ball, I'd go give them a hug or something.
You see it more often now. It was never really back. It was more just team celebrations, but now you see a lot way more personal celebrations. Have
Yeah.
you have you seen any ones that have stuck out to you? From watching lacrosse recently.
Yeah, well, my senior year when we played Cuse at Duke, uh, Deemer went off that day, and I remember he scored one of I think he like 5 or 6 goals that game, and the last goal he scored, he like spun the football like an air football like people do in the NFL, which is funny to see.
I've seen that before. That's great.
Yeah,
That's a super cool one. But get back on track to talking about your junior season. So you guys have a solid. You guys do pretty well. You do solid, but you guys do get knocked down the first round. How did that feel for you after going undefeated in the playoffs and kind of having a realization that you guys are a little bit human, that you guys can be stopped. What was going through your head?
yeah, that was terrible. Really tough thing to go through and experience. There's no way to like really sugarcoat that. If you like look at the historically, I think up until that point, Coach D had been to the Final Four every single year with the Duke team, and that was the year that streak was stacked. And frankly, even from my personal standpoint, up until that point in time, like, I had lost a playoff game ever. High school, we lost in the playoffs in high school my junior year. I was injured. I did not play in that game. So I guess if you count that, then maybe if you don't count that, then I had never lost in the playoffs, which is kind of wild to think about. Or in state playoffs and then won 2 national championships. So I had this like almost borderline irrational confidence going into any sort of playoff environment because I didn't know what it was like to lose. And so to have that happen was perspective shifting in a way. And that was on my mind that entire summer going into rolling into 2016 and starting up my senior year, was just trying to process what went wrong in a way, or what I could have done better, differently, etc., how I could have learned from it. Yeah, there's no way to say other than like that totally sucked. And
Mm-hmm. And what were you carrying through your 2016 season? Just training during the summer. What was one big goal that you had in mind for your last go around?
I just wanted to get back to the Final Four, and I wanted to have a great individual season and stay healthy. I had a lot of hamstring issues in that junior year, which was a problem. So more than anything, I didn't want to miss a practice, and I wanted to stay healthy. And then started 20. Yeah, going.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say, like, after your freshman, sophomore, and junior season, looking back as like for the start of your senior season, looking back as it's like the beginning of the end, what do you think was some of your what do you think were some of your biggest accomplishments so far at Duke?
Had to have been winning those 2 titles my freshman and sophomore year, being part of those teams, and no question about it.
Did you think there was anything that you felt like you could have improved a little bit more from a personal perspective or from a team perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's an easier question to answer now because it's all over, and you look back on it now, and the experience that you had. And I mean, yeah, so we've discussed now I won my first 2 years, and then we lose in 2015 in the first round. The same thing happens again in 2016. And you look back on it now, and you try to think about what could have you done better to avoid that, prevent that from happening. And I'm my own harshest critic, so like I could be pretty tough on myself about things, and I think that I could have done better at being a leader in some situations. Frankly, there might have been a failure of that's not the cause for like the entire season ending, obviously, but from what I could control, I feel like there were things I could have improved upon in that regard. I would say that.
And as you in your 2016 season, you guys do lose again in the playoffs, and your career does come to an end. Do you think, as it's all said and done, do you think you closed the book the way you wanted to?
That's an interesting question because, I mean, obviously you lose your last game of your career in the first round, and that happened 2 years in a row, 2015, 2016. So for those 2 instances, absolutely not. I was not satisfied with the way that those things ended. But once I kind of did the post-mortem analysis and the 3-month period between the season ending and my job starting, you start to process the good and the bad. And at the end of the day, I think I mentioned earlier in the interview, I chose Duke because I wanted to go win championships, and we did that twice. And so I'm very satisfied from that perspective. And it was enough to the point where I felt comfortable walking away and moving on to the next challenge of whatever that will be in like my own personal life, and finding something new to try to excel at and be the best at.
Yeah, for sure. And what do you think are some things that you took from being a Duke lacrosse player and just being a lacrosse player in a whole that you still carry on in your everyday life?
Yeah, something that was always funny for me to think about is the way we went about things in those championship years proved to me that the good guys do win. You see so many examples in today's society of some pretty bad people like getting away with things or still having success and whatnot. And it's very refreshing to have lived through a success story where we did everything right and by the book and no corners were ever cut. So that's had a very lasting impact on myself. And there's a level of excellence that's demanded by the culture there that I look for in everything I do now, whether it's my friendships, the place I work at, things I do. There's a level of competency and excellence I try to demand because I've experienced it for 4 years straight at Duke.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think is something that you've missed the most so far? Being 4 or 5 years out of college now, what is something that you kind of just miss about being a lacrosse player at Duke?
It's got to be just the being a part of an organization where especially sports in general, it's what's stuck out to me is that it really is this like true meritocracy in a way, and whatever you put into it is what you get out of it, and it's purely merit based for excelling and winning a game. There's no corners you can cut to win. You have to put in the work and the time, and you get rewarded for it. And being a part of a system like that, where it's just so cut and dry in that perspective, and having people care about you for no other reason than just that they care about you. There are no other motives that cloud that picture, from the coaches to your teammates. I think that's pretty special. It's something about sports that I've now realized after the fact, because I don't suit up every day to go play lacrosse anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. You're right. You're 100% right on that. And, my last question for you today, I call it the low to high question. So it's a 2-part question. So the first part of it is, what have been some of your lows while playing lacrosse? Could be a bad game. You lost a goal that didn't go in. What do you think that would be for you?
I would say, losing in 2015 and 2016 in the first round have got to be it for sure. Those are definitely the lows.
And going right off that, what have been some of your highs while playing lacrosse? Big game you won, crazy goal you had. What do you think it would be for you?
Yeah, winning 2013, winning 2014, and then specifically that Loyola game that I mentioned to you earlier, where we won in the first round of double OT. Really, really cool experiences.
Case, thank you so much for coming on the Low to High podcast. Really appreciate your time. I think we're both looking forward to watching Duke in this 2021 season. Looks like they're the favorite to win the national championship.
Yeah, man. It was a pleasure chatting, and I look forward to watching those guys rip it up this year. It'll be fun.
All right, take care, man.